So as Steve mentioned, my name is Hillary Hartley. I work for a company called NIC. We're based in Kansas. And the elevator sentence, if you will, is that we run the .gov websites for 23 states, including the esteemed Arkansas.gov and Utah.gov, which was featured earlier. And we're extremely proud of those two, and had, I think, 8 in Best of the Web top 10 this year, so it's been a good year. So on to government as a partner. Way back in the early 90s, let's just throw back for a second, President Clinton, in a response, I think it was to a California fire situation, he said that the response in California really demonstrated his view of government as a partner, rather than just as a participant on the sidelines, kind of telling people what to do instead of helping people do it. So my first question to the panel is, why has it taken us so long to get here regarding e-government? How can government be a better partner? And what do you need? What do you want? Those people kind of clamoring for information and data. And we'll just kind of start with you, Melissa, and go on down.
I'm pretty new to government. I've only worked at BART for 1 year, so I don't know why it took so long, but I'm sure excited that it's happening. And to be a better partner, I think, just kind of get out of the way and make things available and, try to remove some of those hurdles to people. Even just the outreach like we do with the posters on the trains, letting them know that we're there and we have information and we need their help to do it.
Great. So we come from a citizen approach, and we thought that it would be easiest to bring government into Gov 2.0 through enabling its citizens to bring it in. And so, like I demonstrated before, we have these watch areas where people can invite their government into this new web world, and so that's been our approach, and we hope that works.
And just to dig in just a little bit, what do you need from government? Is it municipal? Is it state? What are those kind of data points that you need to put pressure on to make government be a better partner?
It starts with an email address, so publishing your email, and then responding. Definitely government response on SeeClickFix, and governments like, say, the City of Philadelphia's 311 Center coming on and saying, yes, we acknowledge this, and here's your service request, encourages more citizens. There's always going to be citizens that'll knock at your door no matter whether you're responding or not, but talking back in these public forums is really important.
And I guess I would say another way that I sort of see government as a partner is within the realm of open government. And open government is sort of another way of saying read-write government in many ways. So a lot of it sort of has depended on having the communications abilities and technologies to provide some of these read-write mechanisms, or just access to information in efficient ways. So it's helpful to have access to raw data and especially read-write APIs.
So the question was, how come it took so long? Well, I worked in government, actually for the police department as an organizer for a while. And one of the things that I saw as a deficit was actually, especially among some of the police officers and community service officers, was an understanding of actually how to really use a computer. So with our technology, a good portion of the time I spent this summer was actually training them. So I would go and sit down with the neighborhood coordinators and actually set them up on Twitter and spend time with them and teaching them how to use it. So I think it was more of a matter of a skill set and a capacity issue. And it wasn't until that I would go in there and make them feel comfortable, because they're doing two things, right? They're using technology in a way they haven't before, but they're also interacting very publicly in a way they can be ridiculed by, the public can ridicule them. What are you saying? Why are you doing this, right? So the thing that actually is coming next is, how do they actually communicate data in such a way that empowers and can direct and make a difference for folks? So it's not that you just are communicating, but how are you doing it, and how are you empowering people by doing that? I think that's what's taken so long, because perhaps, well, at least in Boston, we haven't addressed that until now.
My perspective comes from a different range. I've worked in both public and private sector, and amazingly enough to me, I've been in state government now for 18 years. A couple of my projects early on were working on the first ever digital driver's license, where we had to store an amazing thing called a JPEG image. Yeah, it was fun. And then we actually, I was about to leave and go back to private industry when the governor at our time, it was then Governor Mike Huckabee, I wanted to allow citizens to renew their car tags online. You used to have to take a day off work to go into several different government entities at the county and state level to renew your car tags. So my summary of what it takes is leadership. Because if we don't have the leadership in place that understands what we need to be able to do, the reason I ended my presentation with a college symbol is my job is to ensure we can communicate across all generations. So we still have to have a physical presence for those people who want to take off a day work and go to the Department of Motor Vehicles. But we also have to be able to be web-enabled and have a voice at the end of a telephone. But truly, to take these services forward in our world, it is about leadership, and I think that's where the recovery website has brought a new focus into how we can really utilize technology to get not only the message of what we're trying to do, but the transparency and the insight so we can do it better.
Great. And Joseph, I want to follow up with you just very quickly. On that same sort of topic, what does it really mean for neighbors to neighbors and for communities that are sort of cropping up like yours, for government to be a partner? Do you think sites like Neighbors for Neighbors or any of the NIC sites that get developed should be separate communities, so to speak? Or should we be moving towards something a little bit more like a municipal platform or something like Organizing for America or serve.gov?
Wow, good question. Well, I can tell you when we've been working on this project with the city, actually, for about 2 years. And we've been talking about it and exploring ways of doing it, looking at what the liabilities are. And at one point, we were actually considering running the networks off cityofboston.gov. So it would be cityofboston.gov/Jamaica Plain, and that would be the Jamaica Plain network. But we did a little research and found that a lot of folks may not trust the network as much because it was on cityofboston.gov. And by being a nonprofit and really just being a neutral space, I think that it lets people feel like it really is grassroots. So, it's not my network, it's not anyone's, it's everyone's. But in terms of other platforms, we chose Ning because it did 85% of what we wanted it to, and it costs, it's free, basically, right? And our domain name's $4.95 a month for each network. So I saw some tweets earlier today. Tim O'Reilly was talking about, failing as cheaply as you possibly can. Like, it doesn't cost much for us to do this. So in terms of the other sites and what Organizing for America and all those folks are doing, I think maybe the question is, what else would you want to do than what they're already doing to keep it sustainable? Because one of the big lessons we learned is we actually had 2 separate networks. We had one just for Neighbors, where people were organizing reading groups and running groups and biking groups and that sort of thing. And then just a police department network where it was all neighborhood watch focused. And both networks were doing okay. But it wasn't until we actually combined them where there was enough value in one place to keep people going back. Like, our page views are ridiculous. We're like 36,000 for just JP and almost 8,000 unique visitors a month. I think for a little neighborhood site, that's pretty hot.
Ben, I might ask you the same question just very quickly. In terms of a SeeClickFix, should that be something that is a platform that governments can plug into?
Yeah, we hope that we will become the platform for this kind of stuff. We are working on our API right now so that people can create apps that can go in and apps that can take the data out. We are open data, and anybody can do with it what they want, with the exception of the email address that's private. But yeah, I think it is really important to create a platform where everyone can converse.
Fantastic. The sort of the meme of Web 2.0, Gov 2.0, and kind of the idea of the government as a platform, I think it really has the opportunity to kind of really break open the public-private partnership metaphor that has kind of happened for the last almost 20 years. NIC created some of the very first ones in 1991 in the state of Kansas. And I'm curious, since we are talking public-private partnership, curious where you think the kind of hottest ideas are coming from right now. Are they coming from within governments? Is it people within agencies and departments that have these ideas and they're looking outside for resources? Is it private sector firms? Or is it, kind of citizens and citizen groups like emerging from things like Apps for America and Democracy? And I'll let anybody go for it.
I was going to say it's coming from Utah. And I was just there, and they did a wonderful job. If you have not seen their site, it is truly wonderful. But the other part to that is it comes from our governor as he looks to ways that he wants to ensure that our Kansans are not only knowledgeable, but they're safe and they're protected. And I know that just on the panel of information, I've got a lot of good ideas to take back. And it's an event like these where we can come in and share. I will tell from the private partnership, it does take a long time for government to change. And one of the goals that I'd want to have back in our state is that we get more closely empowering with one another so that we can implement solutions more rapidly that meet the need of the citizens we serve. And so that to me is our partnership, is learning together not only what services, because we know what services people need, but how can we creatively implement those services and deliver them in a way that's not only cost effective but quick. And that's the environment where we live today.
So you saw on our slide the slide with Beecher Park and the Clean Up the Park. That's one of 120 groups that neighbors have formed without any funding at all in our neighborhood. One group I'll highlight is called JP Trees. They wanted to plant trees in the neighborhood, and they wound up planting about 400, partnered with a local nonprofit. And it was just such a powerful project, and the mayor took notice and committed to planting 100,000 trees in the city. So I'd say that by providing, I call like our platform a civic infrastructure, people with ideas and solutions can step forward, you know, soundboard for voices and then a springboard for action and make things happen.
I think that there are great assets both in the public and private space right now, and being in a position where we're all at, you have to make sure that you find those right people. DC, which was explained as the Chuck Norris of Open 311, I guess, they did a great thing with Apps for Democracy, and as of a few hours ago, we're connected into the DC 311 system. SeeClickFix is connected into the DC 311 system. Without them, we can't really prove that model. So you have to go out and find those people because they are in both worlds.
I would say in transit, in my experience, the best ideas in the apps are coming from the public, not so much internally. We have our hands full just running the trains with the budget cuts that we've had in California. Others have talked about that. But by being a liaison and we have an app center on our website that tells people what's available. We have a mailing list. We go to events like transit camp, bar camp type things to meet with developers, and that way at least we can do our part to show them what's out there. And someone like I think he's a freshman at Cal, actually, a college kid, built probably the most popular application for BART that's called iBART for the iPhone, and so it can come from anywhere.
I definitely see a lot of it coming from just like individuals and passionate people all over, but it definitely helps if there are enabling people within government offices, and of course if there's people like Vivek Kundra and some of the things that have happened on the federal level that sort of like show what's possible and kind of provide leadership, as well as wonderful case studies like what's been going on in DC. It kind of like shows what's possible. But I also think the balance between private and public relationships is something that kind of ebbs and flows with the political atmosphere over time. And it's one of the things that sort of reinforces the importance of open standards, because it can help sort of facilitate that ebb and flow either way without breaking the system.
Well, I want to thank both of you for great segues into future questions. I'll go with the transit camp comment first. Transit camp, I believe, started in Toronto, and then there was a Bay Area transit camp. There may have been more by now, but it's in the BART camp model. And if you don't know about BART camp, I'll just tell you to go to bartcamp.org. But it is a sort of quote-unquote unconference where you show up on the day and there is no schedule. The people who show up create the schedule and create the dialogue and create the presentations, and the day really comes out of the participants. So I firmly believe that is a fantastic model for how we can move forward with creating these types of real, meaningful, deep partnerships. The Secretary of State just held an event at my co-working office in San Francisco where she, invited the public to come and help her brainstorm how to use social media for voter education. I'm curious if any of you have participated in anything like that other than transit camp, or talk about your experience at transit camp. and, kind of elaborate on what you think is the potential for really building these strong partnerships out of a get in the room, sit down together and work on stuff.
In my experience, the different bar camps that I've been to, especially when there's someone from within a government agency, it often provides the first opportunity for sort of a unified message to the people who are the most engaged and passionate about the data or the infrastructure. And oftentimes that's the first instance of it ever happening. We had a MTA sort of open data summit in New York a couple weeks ago, and it sort of allowed the release of some licensing policy statements from the MTA, and it was, for most of the developers there, it was the first time they had ever received sort of like this unified policy voice from the MTA. And many agencies, I think, the MTA is sort of an exceptional case, but I mean, a lot of it is just sort of like finding out how to communicate between developer communities and government agencies, and sort of providing a structure for that.
Yeah, I think the ones I've been at so far, there was Transparency Camp in New York and some others. It's been mostly people from outside government, and it would be excellent if that became more encompassing, because that really will enable us.
Right, and just to give everybody a bit of background on Transit Camp, the one in the Bay Area was specific in inviting people kind of behind the firewall, if you will, inviting the city councilman and inviting the people within government doing that hard work and that good work. And so we kind of tweaked the typical bar camp model so that we could give them a format that kind of felt comfortable for them. So the first day was an opportunity for them to kind of give presentations and really speak. And then the second day was more bar camp style. And I think that worked really well for getting kind of those invitees to come. Is that your...
That was incredibly valuable at breaking down the walls and the misconceptions too. I think people were shocked to know we had 2 people running the entire website, maintaining the content, building it, making it work, and then they could understand why we maybe take a day to answer their question when they would write into us. And just, I'm seeing people in a casual setting and having a beer with them and hanging out is a great way to get to know them.
Right.
We haven't done one yet in our state, but I've just got an item to get your enlisted to come help us, and I want to go to one, so invite me to something, and we'll see how it's done. I will tell you that will be out of my comfort zone to not have a schedule, but I will work on that.
That's kind of the point.
The
It's
beer
a good
part
thing.
I can do.
There we go. There we go.
Start off with one.
Yeah, it's out of my comfort zone.
Well, and sort of continuing on this theme of openness, the segue into my second question, thank you, Philip, was in your abstract for this presentation, I'm just going to read it because it's a great sentence or two. As we've learned from the World Wide Web, the strongest platform for cultivating innovation is a flexible, decentralized system that delivers interoperability based on open standards. It's about time we bring this model to our civic infrastructure. So my question specifically to you, since you're kind of fighting the good fight, is how do you convince government to move toward open source, toward something like Open 3.11? When there are successful standalone platforms, kind of what's that risk-benefit discussion around using an open versus a closed system?
Well, I think this is sort of why Tim O'Reilly first had Web 2.0 conferences, and now he's having Government 2.0 conferences. There's, I think a lot has been proven in some of the open standards that have, or not even necessarily open standards, but simply the model of participation that has come about on the web in the past couple of years. And now it is starting to transition into a lot of open standards. If you look at social networking, all of the major social networking sites, MySpace, Facebook, a variety of them, are all beginning to converge on the same protocols and standards. And this allows, sort of flexibility and people being able to move data from, and their lives sort of are not within walled gardens. And this creates, not just more flexibility and it's less annoying, but it creates efficiencies in the system for better communication and for developing better ideas. So I think it's really been proven in innovations that have happened that are outside of government in the past couple of years.
And just to put the rest of you on the spot really quickly, you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but I am curious what you think is, we're talking about, everybody's talking about open government, but what do you think is the role of open source specifically in the next generation of kind of citizen-driven government services? Anyone?
We're all about open. we're glad to have it out there and want to maintain that with everything that we do.
Open data and open source tools specifically.
Yeah, we're open data because we feel that's really important. We're built on a lot of open frameworks and Google Maps, which is partially open. They have an API which you can work with. If they didn't enable that, we would have a lot of trouble developing what we develop so inexpensively and being able to give it away to people free. So, if government can follow that same model, they'll probably see a lot of benefits from it and should not be scared of it. There's lots of responsible people working on these platforms.
I mean, I don't think Ning really fits into that category, but it's really how we're doing what we're doing, and we don't feel that that knowledge is ours as an organization. We feel it's everyone. So I think that spirit carries into that question. And if we've got something that's working in Boston and you implement it in your city, we think that's great, and we're honored to have been a part of that process. But I think that the collaboration also plays a role in that, where we need to be in communication and collaboration so that we're all stronger.
In our state, we see a blend because it's really about true partnership, and it's utilization of both the existing standard services that we do today that have been around for many, many, many years. Our tax system, for example, is on a database structure called IMS. And I once was speaking to a database class of master's level candidates, and they'd never heard of it. So yet, open source has a very key role in that environment. We want to use the best tool to deliver the best possible service.
Excellent. Ben, you talked about it a little bit, and Claire specifically talked about identifying the stakeholders in the recovery project. One of the biggest pieces that I always preach to our partners is the pieces of the puzzle is regarding government collaboration is finding that champion. And I'm curious, just very quickly before we move on to questions from the audience, how did you find your champion? And if you haven't yet, what do you think the government, what kind of inroads do you need? How do you need the government to be open in that way in order for you to find those people that you need to work with?
You mean within the organization or outside?
Well, since you are part of the government, Claire identified all the stakeholders that were part of really making that project possible. So,
well, I mean, the champion for us
yeah.
is the writer. They're the focus of everything. If we're doing our job well, they're happy,
right.
And they're giving good feedback, and everybody's happy. We have to keep everyone in the loop higher up and make sure we're all understanding what we're doing and being responsible. But if we're keeping our public happy, that's good for everyone.
Good answer.
I think that's a great answer. I think in our case, it's the citizen who uses the tool, because you really quickly see who's going to be responsive and who's going to come on board and who's not. And you want to reach out to those people that are responsive within
right.
government.
In terms of aiming toward becoming the platform, for instance, though, what kind of champion or partner on the inside do you think you need to make that happen? Have you thought about it?
I haven't thought about it too much. It's a good question, but certainly, contests like the Apps for Democracy contest, where they're opening it up for companies like ours to compete to
right.
build the platform, definitely enable us.
Well, I mean, what I've focused on primarily has been, I guess, the citizen as being the champion, as both contributing and receiving the benefit. But certainly, government agencies, benefit from that as well, cost savings, or just having more sensors out on the ground and more people available to partner with them. Yeah.
I would say our users, but inside City Hall, I don't know if he's here, but his name is Nigel Jacob. He really was looking for new innovative stuff, and it's because he was open and saw a possibility that he reached out, and that's how the conversation started.
And for us, it was a key group of people who literally did get together on a Saturday morning to say, how are we going to do this? How are we going to put together a portal that not only meets the citizen needs, but meets the contractors' needs and the business needs for our state and the state agencies, and then meets the reporting requirements of the federal government. So I championed two men in particular. One represents Parks and Tourism, and the other one was Rural Development, because they were getting hundreds of calls already. So we listened to those who were getting the most calls, but we all had the same end vision of serving the citizen.
let's open it up to the floor. Got a question down front. And just name and where you're from.
Hawk, W3C. So my question was for Joseph. This started on Twitter during his talk. I was asking about the scaling of Neighbor for Neighbor. It sounds like you're doing a great thing there. And on the one hand, you said you're not a bottleneck for it. And obviously there's hundreds of projects around the city. That means you're not involved in each one of those in any great depth. But also, you said it would be a lot of work to spread to other cities.
Right.
So if this were to spread to 100 cities, would you need 100 times as much staff? Or so what is the personal thing you need to do to be involved within each of those cities? Or can you just sort of print a blueprint of what you did and have those cities spring up and do it themselves?
Yeah, there's sort of three options. The first thing you need to know is that I'm a volunteer. Like, we've been doing this for fun for 5 years, and we keep going because it produces great results. The second option that we're pursuing right now is grant funding and then fee-for-service for other cities where we'd hire staff to help manage that. But the networks are really managed by the members themselves and key folks inside who are trained to engage and support their users. So for each of our neighborhoods in Boston, there's a couple of people on point in each neighbor that help manage that. And we sort of create content and syndicate it out through those networks, which gives them topics to continue to engage the community on besides whatever they're doing. And the third option is we don't know. So if you have any ideas, please tell me. Thanks.
Anyone else? Over on the right.
Thanks, really interesting. This is Micha Sifri. So this was supposed to be about government as a partner, but I just kept hearing the folks from government describing the public as sort of like a junior partner. So my question for you is there a reason why BART.gov or recovery.gov in Arkansas doesn't go the next step and enable users, citizens, riders, to connect to each other through the site? So, like, if I'm a regular user of BART and I always get on at the same station, there's a community in waiting to be formed, and the site could facilitate that. Same with recovery.gov. If I've got a concern about some spending program, I'm not the only one probably in Arkansas with that concern. Right now, the site only takes that input, puts it in a black hole somewhere, and maybe spits out an answer later. And what we've been talking about all day is the idea of opening up that potential for lateral networking. So is there a reason why you're not doing this other than the fact that you're short-staffed and you're busy doing everything else you have to do?
I'll start first. I think that our main reason, no, there's not a reason. And so for the folks who attended with me, we'll take that down and be able to act on that. The only thing that we have, as we've worked on it, we're constantly analyzing, is our website doing what we intended it to do, and is it reaching the people we need to reach? And we haven't closed that feedback loop. So great suggestion, and if you give me your email or your Twitter, we'll make sure that you're aware of when that comes out. Because that is something that government needs to do more frequently, is tie everything together to the constituents back home.
And it's our next step, but we're taking some baby steps along the way. We only started all of this basically 1 year ago. So we feel like we've come a pretty long way in 1 year, and getting to that next level of interactivity would be awesome. We've drawn them up, actually, like whiteboard, how we would want to do it. We've had at least 3, vendors in to come and tell us how they would do it, but it costs a lot of money that we don't have for the technology to run it. So we're definitely looking into it, and I think within a year's time, you'll see something like that from BART.
That's all we have time for. Give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you.